Welcome to Boss Talk. My name is Jim Parker. This is the show where we talk about selling businesses, and this is my business partner, Carey Sobel.
Thanks for joining us today. Today's episode is Game Plan, Assembling Your Business Sale Team. And as far as assembling your business sale team, you probably have a good portion of it already assembled because they're likely already playing a role in your business or in your life. Aside from a business broker, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But Jim, I would make the argument that I think the most important person on a business owner's team when they're going to sell their business is their CPA.
Yeah, I think that's one of the two, that and the attorney and the business broker. I'd say those are the top three. But, I think with the CPA, we're bringing them in the very, very early stages of the process.
Before the business is even listed.
Yeah, before it's even listed for sale. Because one of the first things that we're going to do once we engage with a seller is we're going to want to do a broker's opinion of value to determine what the most probable selling price of that business is. And we need to collect certain financial information. And to do that, we're not collecting a lot of information, but business owners are busy. You know how it is. They got a lot going on and they're not the most organized people. No offense. I think business owners are, usually visionary type people.
Yeah.
The big picture, not very good at the detail thing. And
Sure.
That's why they tend to be successful. But having that CPA so you can bring that information up in the beginning, I think is crucial.
And the CPAs are usually pretty cooperative when we reach out. Sometimes, a business owner says, hey, my CPA doesn't know that I want to sell. Mm-hmm. And I don't want them to know, which I really don't see the issue with it, because most business owners probably don't realize, but in order to get to a closing, you're going to have to let your CPA know, because you're going to likely require a good amount of their time. But at the point in time that we engage a CPA, we're asking for all of the information, and very rarely do I have a holdup from a CPA when I request this information. I feel like the CPAs kind of know what we're getting at when we reach out.
Yeah,
right?
and they usually have it at their fingertips. And, when we go down, we're not asking for that much information up front. But as we go down the process and we get a buyer on board and the buyer's going through due diligence, they're going to be asking for a lot of different information, a lot more in-depth information. It could be general ledgers. It could be, so many balance sheets for the X amount of number of years, and more information. And, letting us work with the CPA directly to gather that information just saves the seller's time.
It does.
They can concentrate on running the business, because we need them concentrating on running the business to keep the numbers where they're at or climbing. Last thing we want them to do is get distracted in the process and their numbers start to decline. So that CPA is a very vital part of the process.
And, contrary to reaching out to a business owner that, maybe is actually organized and
Mm-hmm.
has all of those things readily available for them, balance sheets, P&Ls, whatnot. You're still engaging the CPA at some manner through the road, down the road of selling the business. But, there's times where I've went to list a business for sale and I was like, okay, can I get your P&Ls to the seller of the business? And he goes, P&Ls.
Yeah.
He literally didn't know what a P&L was.
That's amazing. I can't believe they're a business owner and they don't know what P&Ls are.
He goes, you mean like my numbers? I go, yeah, your numbers. And then I got a P&L, or it said profit and loss statement at the top from the CPA. But,
even if you're in a bigger business and you have an in-house bookkeeper, it's still good to have your CPA getting the information, because a lot of times, even if you have an in-house bookkeeper, you may not want them to know the business is for sale.
Right.
And all of a sudden the business owner is asking for all this information. It might raise red flags, whereas if you, say, hey, the CPA is reaching out to the bookkeeper and just saying, hey, we're going through the documents. We just want to make sure everything, blah, 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 blah. Or a lot of times they already have access to the QuickBooks or whatever accounting software they're using.
Yeah.
So, that gets around that whole worrying about the CPA or worrying about the in-house bookkeeper and the confidentiality issues. And, you brought up a good point about CPAs and, sometimes business owners don't want to, none of us want anybody to know the business is for sale.
Yeah.
We want to keep it confidential all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
But, you said that, sometimes a business owner is worried about the CPA. CPAs by nature, for what they do in their profession, they're keeping things confidential.
Mm-hmm.
They look at a lot of different financial information, and their job is not to tell anybody or, any of their clients' financial information. So they're already kind of,
it's a good point.
they're in that profession anyways.
Yeah. So we engage the CPA from the beginning to gather the information to do a broker opinion of value. We may ask some corresponding questions back and forth with the CPA. We bring the business to market. We locate a buyer. Buyer asks questions through the due diligence process if they get into a purchase contract. We're engaging the CPA at that point. All the way up to closing, there's another critical component where a CPA comes in every single time, which is the allocation of the sale price.
Yes. Yes.
So, typically if a business owner employs a CPA to run their business, I'd say 9 times out of 10, they're probably also doing the personal tax returns of that business owner. And when a business owner sells their business, they have to allocate the price of the business, working with the buyer of the business on asset value and value of all the different types of categories of assets. And it's a critical component that the CPA is involved, because the CPA is going to help make sure that the financial position of that seller or buyer, doesn't matter, is argued for their best interest for their tax position.
Absolutely. And Carey, this is the thing. A lot of times business owners are so concerned, and they should be, but they're very concerned up front. How much am I going to be able to sell my business for? And at the end of the day, I mean, that is important. But at the end of the day, it's also not how much you're going to be selling the business for, but how much of that money you're going to be able to keep in your pocket.
Yep.
Because they are going to have to pay taxes off that sale price. And this is where I think it's really, really important that you bring in an outside CPA to help your CPA, because the business owner might have a great CPA that they've had it for a long time that's really good at doing taxes year in and year out, but they may not be an expert when it comes to tax consequences on a sale of a business.
Yeah.
And there are CPAs out there like Monty Walker out of Texas, fantastic guy, very, very knowledgeable. He specifically concentrates on acquisitions and saving taxes on acquisitions. That's what he does day in and day out, where the local neighborhood CPA, they might be a great CPA, but they're not dealing with these issues all the time.
Sure.
And somebody like Monty's fantastic, because Monty can come in, and we're not there to replace, or we don't want them to replace the seller CPA. We just want somebody like Monty to come in and work with the owner's CPA to kind of advise them and work that way to, get the best tax savings for a seller.
And I think you could classify Monty as also a tax strategist.
Yes.
Right. So, sometimes it's not hiring a secondary CPA, it's hiring a tax strategist to come in for the taxation part of selling a business. So, aside from a bookkeeper or a CPA for a business owner, it's bringing in maybe a tax strategist to consult for it. But something that CPA should not be involved with in your business sale team.
Yes, I know where you're going to go with this. Go ahead.
Providing the value of a business. CPA should not be providing business valuations. It's not what they do. And oftentimes they are outside of their comfort zone and doing it to create value to their client, but they're oftentimes actually hurting their client because, again, it's not what they do.
Right. And you know what? It's not just CPAs, but I'm seeing a lot right now. I've been talking to a lot of CPAs, I'm talking to a lot of financial planners and wealth managers and different types of financial people, and they're now offering to do valuations on businesses, and they're charging a couple $1,000s for these valuations. And I've talked to them, and I'm like, what are you doing? How are you doing it? And I've seen of some of them, I've seen their ad backs. How we do ad backs. Yeah. We can cover ad backs, and that was done in another episode, but they're not doing it right. So these sellers are paying extra money to their CPA or to their financial planner, paying a couple $1,000s for a valuation, and they're not doing the valuation properly. And these are people that are doing a lot of valuations,
Yeah.
I really think the only two people that should be talking to a seller on the value of that business is an actual appraiser, somebody is an actual appraiser that has the certifications to be an appraiser, or somebody like us, a business intermediary that handles business sales all the time.
Sure.
Most of the time I'm seeing these things come back and they're overpriced and they're overvalued. And that's one of the worst things that you can do going to the market when it was overvalued. And the last thing you want to do as a seller is go to the market undervalued.
Yeah.
And, because you're leaving money on the table. I mean, this is something I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure you're getting the right people doing the appraisals or the valuations, and not having your CPA or financial planner. And these are people right now, I'm seeing it, they're really pushing, hey, we're doing these valuations, and they're pushing it into the marketplace, and they're doing them wrong.
And I'm sure, Jim, there's certified appraisers that are actual CPAs, but they've got
That's
a
different.
specialty
Yes.
in appraising businesses versus, like you said, your neighborhood CPA that's, a tax return factory,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But the CPA just in general should be involved in this process. And then if the CPA reaches a level above their aptitude in M&A or selling businesses, they should not feel like their tail's between their legs for reaching out to a tax strategist or to an appraiser to help out for the best interest of their client.
Carey, I've been selling businesses for nearly 25 years. I probably get a couple owners a year that tell me, I already know how much my business is worth. I had my CPA, and I say, how do you know that? My CPA did evaluation.
Send me their work.
And I say, yeah, send it over. And I have not yet in 25 years seen a CPA that's not an actual appraiser send something over that was accurate and correct. And it's a shame because they're being charged for this.
Yeah, of course. So, moving on, we talked about a CPA. I think you could probably guess to our audience that a CPA is important, and probably the next thing is an attorney, right?
Yep.
So I want to address something that we talked about before we started the episode, that in a lot of upper Main Street, or very lower middle market transactions, there's often a third-party closing attorney. And a third-party closing attorney doesn't represent the buyer. They don't represent the seller. They represent the transaction. So oftentimes, the escrow attorney is also the closing attorney, the third-party closing attorney, and they get involved after we're through everything and we're about to close on the business. They produce a set of documents, they govern the transaction, they close on the transaction. For some bigger deals, there's sometimes not a third-party closing attorney, and buyer and seller have an attorney themselves that get the deal done, right? So let's talk about part of your business sale team being, and I guess in this position, let's talk from a seller. So if you're selling your business, that your attorney, your personal attorney, will likely be on your business sale team. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, that always concerns me because, a lot of business owners that we deal with have attorneys that they work with because they've hit a level of success. And anytime you hit a level of success, you need a business attorney, not necessarily because they're being sued or they're suing somebody. It's just in the course of business, you need a business attorney that you rely on from time to time to review contracts and things like that. And the problem is that the business attorney, even though they're a business attorney, may not and probably are not the right attorney to be guiding the business owner when it comes to the sale of their business. A business owner really needs an attorney that specializes in doing M&A work, business sales at the end of the day. Big time.
I agree with you, but let me challenge the statement. Or rather, let me ask a challenging question. Is there a dollar amount or a certain situation to where you think a M&A attorney or attorney that specializes in business sales is needed as opposed to maybe an individual's business attorney?
Probably, I would say anything with an enterprise of value over $1. Now let's take this back and let's unwind this a little bit. I think on smaller transactions, a business is going to sell for $500,000, $750,000 and under. Do you need a full-fledged M&A attorney? No, you probably don't, but you still need an attorney that specializes in business sales. Yeah. So they're accustomed to what's normal and what's right. I mean, those kind of attorneys, that's what they deal with day in and day out. Whereas a regular business attorney, they're not dealing with this all the time. They don't know what the norms are, what the ranges between this and this should be. Whereas a good business attorney or an attorney that specializes in business sales, it's critical. Yeah. And then on the M&A side, having a good M&A attorney is vital. I mean, it is vital, especially when you start working with very sophisticated buyers, such as, buyers that are in the same industry or family offices or private equity groups. They're hiring some of the best attorneys out there. They're hiring M&A attorneys. The seller needs a good M&A attorney on their side. Yeah. And I got a funny story, not a funny story, but a couple of years ago, I was doing a deal. Dealing with another broker. I was working with the buyer. The other broker was working with the seller, and they both hired their own attorneys. And what ended up happening is both of those attorneys, we got to a sticking point, Carey, where neither attorney would budge. And it was very, very frustrating because the attorneys were not M&A attorneys. They didn't know what was reasonable and what's normal, and just came to a screeching halt. And about 2 or 3 weeks went by and we couldn't get either attorney to budge. Me and the other broker had to hire an M&A attorney to step in out of our own pocket. Me and the other broker out of our own pocket hired another attorney to step in to negotiate between the two attorneys to get the deal done. Because those two business attorneys, they're just not, it's not what they do.
Did the deal close?
The deal did close. The deal did close, and the buyer was happy and the seller was happy.
Interesting.
So.
Actually, I think I remember you telling me that story. And I think the part that I didn't know was that they weren't M&A attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, a decent attorney that practices business should be able to get a smaller deal across the finish line, understand the blocking and tackling. I'm assuming this was probably a little bit of a higher
ticket. Yeah, it was a little bit larger of a ticket.
But, you know, it's like if you have a probate attorney versus a criminal defense attorney, they're doing different things, right? A general business litigator, a business attorney should be able to do the blocking and tackling that's necessary to maybe consult for their seller getting to a point of maybe closing, but there is a threshold where somebody that does this understands the forms, the terminology, the way to solve problems. A lot of it comes from experience.
And you know what? It's not just getting it so that we get to the closing table, but the seller has to be very concerned of, you know, what
happens afterwards.
Yeah, afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, what could happen 6 months later, a year after closing, and you got to make sure that you have a good M&A attorney that's advising them. And Carey, at the end of the day, you know, just like any other industry, you know, there's bad business brokers, there's good intermediaries, there's great intermediaries, there's good CPAs, great CPAs. Well, there's, you know, bad attorneys, good attorneys, great attorneys. And so if you are thinking about selling your business and you want to talk to an M&A attorney, it's probably best if a seller reaches out to their intermediary. And if we're involved in the transaction, reach out to us, because we know what attorneys are good, you know, and they aren't just going to be trying to, you know, do the highest billing as they possibly can and, you know, take as much time as they possibly can to get paid as much, you know, but an attorney that really is very, very knowledgeable, knows what they're doing, and is going to be efficient in getting it done, and it's going to help them get the best terms possible.
And there's a role that we play working with an attorney. You know, we're talking today about assembling a business sale team, and there's a role that the broker plays, that the attorney plays, the CPA plays, and so on and so forth. I had a person reach out to me recently to sell their business. I gave them a valuation. We walked through the process, and during the process of me about to bring the business to market, a buyer reached directly out to the seller, said, "I want to buy you. It's a publicly traded company. It's a perfect buyer." Seller calls me back and said, "Hey, you know, I'm ready to do the engagement. I just want to make sure, you know, that your legal review is included in the sale or included in your commission." So I'm a business broker. I'm not an attorney. That seller actually went to an M&A attorney and just completely circumvented using a business broker. Now, chances are that M&A attorney will probably be able to facilitate the transaction, but there's still a place for the business broker to play a role, because they're negotiating for themselves with a publicly traded company and working with an attorney that they don't know from Adam to come in on the deal. Yes, protecting their best interests, but probably not as... You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying.
It was an interesting situation.
You know, let's face it, right now, private equity groups have never been, you know, there's not been more private equity groups ever than there is today. Private equity just keeps growing and growing and growing. And a lot of times, whether they're buying the business on their own or they're teamed up with an industry player, you know, somebody that's already in the industry looking to expand, and they're using a private equity group to finance the transactions or help get that transactions get done from a monetary standpoint. You know, there's a lot of push out right now. There's a lot of private equity groups and industry players that are writing letters directly to the business owner saying, "We are interested in acquiring your business." And I think the worst thing that a business owner could do when they get that letter and go, "Oh, you know, I'm thinking about selling my business. I know this industry player. They'd be a good fit for my business. I'm going to call them up." Carey, you know, no matter how good they think they are at negotiation, they're never going to be able to maximize their sales price and get the best terms possible if they're working with them directly. Number one is that this is what they do all the time. They're professional buyers.
They're coming in to get
a
a deal.
whole team, yeah. And you know what? It's like, as a business owner, you're like an amateur boxer getting into the ring with a heavyweight champion at the end of the day. You know, you need to make sure that, you know, no matter how good you are at negotiations, these people, that's what they do. They're looking at buying businesses every single day. They're really good at what they're doing. And number two, this is probably even more important, is you contacting, as a business owner, a private equity group directly. You're putting yourself in the position, are you going to get the best price? Are you going to get the best terms? I just sold a business, $25 million. Can't say what industry it is because it's under confidentiality. But they had been getting a letter from an industry player numerous times over a 5-year period of time. Hey, if you're ever interested in selling your business, we're very familiar with you. We would love to acquire you. If that seller would have reached out to them directly, I am certain, and the sellers are certain, that they would have never gotten the best price and the best terms they possibly get. Now, they did end up selling to them. Mm-hmm. They did. But we took it to the market. We ran it as a structured sale. We came out really hard, swinging very hard. We're very aggressive in what we're doing. We had over 250 not inquiries. We had over 250 confidentiality agreements signed by buyers, and we had 49 offers on the business. The people that bought the business, or the group that bought the business, knew that the business was out there for sale and was being run as a structured sale. They knew they were competing against others, and they had to come in with the best price and terms possible. And that's how you're going.
I would love to have known the delta. I would love to have known the delta in if they negotiated directly to where you came in to help out.
I totally agree. Yeah. Because you only got one buyer at the table. You really don't have much leverage.
You have zero leverage.
But when you know that when that buyer knows that they're competing against other very, very qualified buyers,
you got to reach a little deeper into your pocket.
And these buyers have deep pockets themselves.
Not to mention that, but if a seller hires professional representation, if a seller has a nice package put together, their financials are organized, the value of the company is going up and up and up, as opposed to somebody reaching out and you just going, okay, here, let me lift up my dress and show you everything I got.
That's a perfect analogy, Carey. That's a perfect analogy. And do private equity groups and industry players like or hate a business intermediary? Most private equity groups and industry players, they like the fact that we're there for the reasons that you mentioned. We're putting together the information we know that they're going to want to see. We're organizing it in the way they want to see it. A lot of time, these private equity groups and industry players, especially private equity group, they're looking at so many deals over a year that when you put that information in front of them, they're looking at it for like 10 seconds. And if it's not grabbing their attention, they're looking at the next deal opportunity. So you want to grab their attention right away, say, I want to read on to this further. And the information's there. It's organized the way it's supposed to be organized. They're dealing with a professional, and they like that. They really like working with a seasoned, experienced business intermediary because it saves them a lot of time. But they also know that we're educating the seller. Yeah. And it makes it easier on their end that we're educating the seller and what they potentially could get or not get, or, what they could be looking at, throughout the transaction. So it makes their job easier on that. The only thing that private equity groups and industry players do not like about an intermediary is the fact that
they can't take advantage of the buyers.
I don't want to say take advantage, but they're going to end up paying more. Yeah. Which is bad for the private equity group or the industry player, but it's good for the seller. Yeah. So I just, that's probably one big thing that if you're watching this video is that you get a letter like that. And even if it's somebody you think would be a great acquisition, be a great person to sell your business to, don't engage them directly.
Yep. Wish I could go back and go tell the person that just did that. And anyway, so wrapping up attorney representation or attorney being on a sales team, the attorney's involved in, almost the whole process from potentially letting your attorney know that you're going to sell your business. Do I have any liens, encumbrances? Is there anything out there that I should be aware of, open lawsuits that's going to materially affect the sale, to reviewing the listing agreement, to reviewing the purchase contract, to reviewing the closing documents, and any combination of those things. The attorney can be involved in a variety of different steps.
Right. Yep.
Let's move on. Let's talk about banker or lender. So again, size specific, and regardless of size, more transactions than not are going to have some level of financing involved in it.
Yes, correct.
Whether it's an institutional bank or it's a family offices fund or a private fund, whatever it is, there's typically some type of leverage involved in a transaction. Jim, we do a lot of upper Main Street, lower middle market deals. Good majority of these are SBA financing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we see, general commercial financing, but we work with quite a few lenders, and they're a critical part of a business sale team.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. When you're talking about a situation where you've got an enterprise value of, let's say, $500,000 to $3 or $4 million enterprise value, chances are that the buyer is going to be an individual buyer and they're going to be buying that business with an SBA loan.
Yep.
And so, what we kind of do up front is, when we are doing a broker's opinion of value, finding out what the most probable selling price of that business is, before I even go back to the seller and give them that information, I'm talking to quality SBA lenders and saying, hey, I want to get this business pre-qualified. Here's the financials. Here's the add backs I did. This is the value I put on the business. And from a business broker standpoint, I feel very confident and comfortable that this is going to attract buyers and I'm going to maximize the sales price for the seller. But what do you think from a lending perspective? Because that's a critical part. When you're working in that $500,000 to $3 or $4 million enterprise value, 95% of the time, it's going to be an SBA loan. And we got to get the SBA lenders on board up front.
Yes. And you're essentially validating your work as a broker to check your work to say, yes, does this deal underwrite? So that when you bring it to market, you're opening up a larger buyer pool. So, for sellers watching this, and we're talking about assembling a business sales team, you may say, well, why do I need a lender involved on my team? Well, you need a lender to validate what an institution is willing to acquire or allow somebody to acquire your business for. So it's somebody that a seller may not think is a part of their business sale team, but at Boss Group and part of our strategy, we almost always do that to pre-qualify it.
Yep. And then when I'm talking to an SBA lender, another thing that I do is I tell them what the value is. But sometimes I'll look at it and go, I think I can get a little bit more than that. And I'm talking to the SBA lender and going, how far can we push this?
Yeah.
And we can still get an SBA loan done within what's a normal framework. And it's also, this is a critical part too, is, if a seller is looking to sell their business, if there's any problems or uglies or any skeletons in the closet, you need to drag that out up front. Let us know as intermediaries, or, you're working with another intermediary. Tell them up front what those uglies are, the skeletons are, because we need to talk to the SBA lender about that too, because we want to get that deal
or
to the closing table.
Or any lender.
Yeah, or any lender. It's 50% of the deals out there. This is a national average. This isn't our average. We're far from this, but 50% of the deals that go under contract
never close,
fall apart before they get to the closing table. And part of that is flushing out all the skeletons in the closet, all that stuff. And we need to communicate that to the SBA lender up front to make sure that we can get the deal across the table before everybody spends, brokers and everybody involved spends hundreds and hundreds of hours.
So buyer and seller can agree on a deal in principal terms all day long, but is the lender going to endorse that deal and allow it to get to the closing table? So CPA, different types of attorneys, different types of bankers or lenders. There's some specialists that are involved based on the type of businesses and what industry they're in. We listed them here. We don't need to go super deep into them, but a liquor license professional, somebody who specializes in either facilitating the sale of a liquor license, that holds paper on a liquor license or a note, or somebody who is comfortable with getting licensure for a liquor license is often involved in a deal that has a liquor license attached. Equipment appraiser, heavy equipment. Somebody who is about to list their business for sale may want a third-party value on their equipment. I just got this done. I had a third-party valuation put a $600,000 value on the FF&E. And yesterday I got the appraisal back, and the appraiser, who is a commercial real estate appraiser, who was also appointed to value the equipment, put a $200,000 value on it. So I'll be dealing with that after today's episode. But equipment appraisal, then you have commercial real estate. Commercial real estate agent may be involved in a deal. Now, we represent real estate involved in a transaction as well. We're licensed realtors. We practice the sale of commercial real estate. But if it's a complex transaction, maybe we want to bring in a specialist, or maybe we need a commercial real estate appraiser to come in to appraise. So depending on the deal, there's a bunch of individuals that are professionals in their trade that we bring in to work with us to appoint them onto a business owner sale team or assembling the sale team.
Right. And that goes back to the whole process that we're kind of quarterbacking the whole process. You know, at the end of the day, all these people, the CPAs, the attorneys, the people that are special licensed specialists, commercial real estate agents, anybody else that's involved, we're kind of overseeing everything, making sure everything's being done the way it needs to be done. We're quarterbacking it. We're getting it down the field.
And we had an interesting one that we added in here that I think we kind of assume that this is a part of it, but we wanted to bring this knowledge to sellers as they're considering assembling their business sale team, that they need to have a confidant that is essentially their emotional, physical, moral support through the process. And oftentimes it's a spouse, right? But it could also be a key employee or a family member. And it's doing things such as making sure that the door is unlocked when it needs to for a showing, or being there just for moral support, just a person that they can rely on, that they can go through this process with.
Right? It's critical. Like, this happens all the time, but, recently, a few weeks ago, I closed on a deal. The husband, was doing the operations, and the wife was, she gathered up all the information. Once we went under due diligence, or under contract, going through the due diligence process, she was the one coordinating all the information, getting it all together. And, this was a situation where there was a lot going on. And so she spent many, many hours working on that and getting everything put together and doing it in an organized way. And it allowed her husband to keep operating the business and keeping those numbers going strong. I think that's so important if you're in that position where you can have somebody that helps you handle that process.
Yeah.
And from an emotional standpoint, that's a big thing too for business owners. It's a lot of times, a business owner, it's become part of them.
Yep.
They become their identity.
We have a whole episode
and just
on that.
We did a whole episode on that, and just, talking that through with somebody. The one thing that they should not lean on that person about, though, is things like the value of the business or the structure and how things should go. Sometimes business owners get clouded by people in their inner circle that have never sold a business, have no clue, or they've sold one business and they think they're an expert. And then the business owner is debating with the business intermediary or the M&A attorney or, the CPA that specialize in saving taxes because, my Uncle Bob told me blah, 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 blah. Keep things in perspective of, you're hiring professionals for a reason. There's a great place to have that confidant. I think that's very, very important, but don't have them be, advising you on things that they don't know anything about,
Fair enough. Aside from a business broker, we'll touch on last. I think there's one other person that we'll bring up today, which is a wealth manager or financial planner. Likely a seller already has one of these. I think there's two questions mainly to ask your financial planner and wealth advisor when you're talking about, there's 100 questions, but two upon the sale of the business. One is typically, how do I save on taxes? Mm-hmm. Is there any tools that I can use or anything? How does this work with my estate, et cetera, et cetera? And what do I do with this money?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So you should have a game plan prior to the sale on what you're going to do when you come up with said amount of money. But of course, afterwards, it's critical that you have that conversation with your wealth manager.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's important that you talk as a business owner. You talk to your financial planner or wealth manager, before you execute a letter of intent, and you should definitely do it before you have a definitive,
dollar amount,
purchase agreement, because the terms may change because of things that they're advising and recommending you do. I mean, things shouldn't, you should not be debating or negotiating with a buyer on things that could harm the chances of getting a deal across the finish line because of investment opportunities. But you should be structuring things or putting things like in the definitive agreement that, could affect it on the outcome that really don't affect the buyer. So it's very important you bring them up early in the process and, just explain to them it's very confidential that I'm selling the business. And make sure they realize that. And again, they're professionals that
they're working with the financials of an individual.
Yeah, they keep confidential information, anything else. So, even have them sign a confidentiality agreement if you want.
Yep. And the most important part of a business sale team is your business broker, your M&A advisor. And, I find it almost comical at this point when sellers are wanting to take this on themselves. Sitting in a chair where I've recently sold one of my businesses and engaging with so many different sellers that sometimes have tried the process and then come to us or are considering the process, but then eventually with us. Could you sell your own business? Absolutely you can, but you're not going to do as good of a job as a trained professional, a certified professional, a licensed professional, like a business broker. So, aside from
you could do your own tooth extraction as well. You know what I mean?
You could build your own house.
You could give yourself your own heart surgery if you wanted to go through that pain. I mean, it's the same situation. And you're looking at, scenario where 80 to 90% of the businesses for sale do not sell. That's a national estimated average. 8 to 9 businesses for sale are not going to sell out of 10, which is crazy. And then plus all the time is involved in trying to get the sale done. That's like building a house. You're not a contractor and you've never, built a house before and you're like, I want to build my own house. Well, yeah.
You better have some time.
There's enough tools and information out there that you could build your own house. And you could hire the contractors. You could get the house done. But is that the best use of your time? You're taking all that time away from your business and you're putting it towards trying to sell your business. First of all, is your business going to continue operating the way it needs to operate? And you're going to keep the numbers up because that's the most important thing. 90% of the businesses for sale, 90% of the businesses I take to the market sell. The 10% that I do not sell, I had one this year and I had one last year where once it was sold, once we had it under contract, the sellers mentally checked out. They're like, it's for sale. And they mentally checked out and their numbers went down. These weren't even people trying to sell on their own, but you're trying to sell on your own and you're trying to run your business. And at the end of the day, that's a lot of work what we do.
Yeah.
A lot of work. And I can tell you, I feel very, very confident in saying that whatever you pay a really experienced, seasoned business intermediary that really knows what they're doing, you are going to more than make up for that
in the value
you're going to receive.
And sometimes it's not even
price.
Sometimes it's not even value. Sometimes it's terms. Sellers are so focused on the purchase price, but sometimes it's the way the deal's structured. And again, so we know the market, we know the process, we provide education through the process. There is a lot more value in hiring a business broker than just bringing a buyer to the table. In fact,
a lot of value. We can help get it across the finish. We've seen so much. We've sold so many deals. We've seen a lot. We know how to overcome those obstacles. We are trying to foresee those obstacles before they even arise. I think it's crazy when a business owner tries to sell it on their own. They're probably getting less money. They're getting worse terms. And they are spending a tremendous amount of time trying to get it across the finish line.
Their stress levels are definitely going up.
And they don't know what's normal and what's not normal.
Yeah.
So,
we talked about some basic team members when assembling your business sales team. It's really not that complicated, but making sure that these people are informed, in order, ready to play their part. In which case a business intermediary, broker, M&A advisor typically quarterbacks it from experience. You can set yourself up for success if you have this team well organized.
Yeah.
And you could also hurt yourself by missing one of those or hiring the wrong person.
Carey, I just want to, before we finish up, I just want to make this point. I've already said it, but I really want to stress this point. If a business owner is looking to sell their business, I urge them to find a very seasoned, knowledgeable, experienced business intermediary, whether it's a business broker, an M&A advisor, to help them sell their business. I mean, I hope they reach out and contact us, but whether it's us or somebody else, I think it's vital that they get somebody that really knows what they're doing.
Couldn't agree more. And hopefully today we showcased our knowledge of the business sale team, and we would love to be a member of your business sale team if you're considering the sale of your business. Thank you for joining into this episode of Boss Talk and all of our episodes. If you have a topic you would like us to cover, please let us know. We'd be happy to do so. And we'll join you next time on Boss Talk.
Thank you for watching. Have a fantastic day.